On October 15, 2021, police found themselves grappling with a horrifying scene in a quiet Olympia apartment. 32-year-old Owen McGraw, a respected architect, was discovered dead, the victim of a brutal attack. The primary suspect, his girlfriend, Rachel Hayes. As detectives dug deeper, they revealed a disturbing pattern of surveillance and manipulation. Rachel's controlling behavior had escalated to a tragic and deadly climax. How did a relationship that began with promise end in such violence? Owen McGraw was born in Olympia, Washington, a small town known for its natural beauty and close community. Growing up in a nature-loving family, he developed a deep appreciation for the outdoors and a calm, thoughtful personality. His parents, both teachers, inspired his love for learning and creating. Owen was admired for his kindness, his ability to connect with people, and his steady, reliable nature. He was a supportive friend and family member. When he passed away, his loss was deeply felt by everyone in the Olympia community. Rachel Hayes grew up in a middle-class suburb of Seattle, Washington, in a modest two-story house on a quiet street. Her parents, Gloria and Michael Hayes, worked hard to provide a comfortable life for Rachel and her younger brother. From a young age, Rachel was bright and excelled in school. She loved being recognized for her achievements and craved attention from family, teachers, and peers. However, Rachel's need for attention sometimes caused issues in her relationships. She could be possessive and demanding, wanting to be the most important person in others' lives. Her high school boyfriend, Trevor Snow, and even close friends noticed this side of her, leading to conflicts when Rachel felt sidelined or replaced. Rachel pursued a career in cybersecurity, drawn by her love for technology and problem-solving. She quickly excelled, but her skills also enhanced her controlling tendencies. She became adept at monitoring and manipulating digital information, gaining an unusual level of control over the digital world. Rachel's need for validation and control, rooted in her early years, significantly influenced her professional and personal life. Owen McGraw and Rachel Hayes first crossed paths in May 2020 at a local farmer's market in Seattle. It was a bright, sunny day, and the market was buzzing with activity. Owen was there to buy fresh vegetables and to enjoy the atmosphere, something he often did on weekends. He was walking by a stand selling old books when he spotted Rachel. She was flipping through a worn copy of a classic novel. Owen couldn't resist striking up a conversation. "That's one of my favorites," he said, pointing to the book she held. Rachel looked up, intrigued. She smiled and replied, "Mine too. I'm a sucker for a good story." From that moment, there was an undeniable connection between them. They discovered they had much in common: a love for classic literature, a shared passion for hiking in the beautiful Washington wilderness, and an appreciation for the simple pleasures in life. Their conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter and the excitement of discovering each other's interests. They spoke about their favorite authors, their most memorable hikes, and their love for nature. Owen admired Rachel's sharp mind and her enthusiasm for life. Rachel was drawn to Owen's warmth and his genuine, thoughtful nature. It seemed like fate had brought them together. Friends and family would later describe this meeting as serendipity, a chance encounter that quickly blossomed into something more. In the early days of their relationship, everything seemed perfect. They went on long hikes in the nearby mountains, spent evenings reading together, and cooked meals using fresh ingredients they bought at the market where they first met. Owen felt he had found someone who truly understood him, someone who shared his values and interests. Rachel, too, appeared to be enchanted by Owen's calm and steady presence. She often spoke of how comfortable she felt with him, how he made her feel seen and appreciated. But beneath the surface, there were early signs of trouble that would soon become hard to ignore. Friends noticed how quickly Rachel wanted to move the relationship forward. She often insisted on knowing Owen's every move, where he was, and who he was with. Rachel had a raging need to monopolize Owen's time. She wanted to be with him constantly, from early morning hikes to late-night phone calls. Rachel would often surprise him by showing up at his work or waiting for him outside the places he visited, even if he hadn't mentioned his plans to her. She would insist on spending every weekend together, leaving little room for Owen to see his friends or family. At first, Owen didn't mind. He was caught up in the excitement of a new romance and appreciated the attention. He thought Rachel was just deeply in love, and he liked the idea of being someone's priority. However, those closest to Owen saw things differently. Owen's sister, Amelia, was among the first to notice the changes. Amelia and Owen had always been close, but lately, Owen had been canceling their plans more often. He would always have an excuse, Amelia later recalled. He'd say Rachel needed him, or they had already made plans he couldn't break. Amelia began to feel that Owen was slowly being pulled away from his family, his time increasingly consumed by Rachel's demands. Owen's friend Carl also noticed some concerning behavior. Carl and Owen had been friends since college and shared a love for playing guitar together on weekends. But suddenly, Owen became unavailable. He stopped coming around as much, Carl said. When I did see him, he was always checking his phone. Rachel would text him constantly, even when we were hanging out. It was like she couldn't stand to be apart from him, even for a couple of hours. Carl and Amelia grew worried. They began discussing Rachel's behavior with each other, noting how her constant need to be in contact seemed less like affection and more like control. They tried to bring their concerns to Owen, gently suggesting that Rachel might be too clingy. But Owen dismissed their worries. He laughed off their observations, insisting that Rachel just cared about him deeply. "She's just really into me," he would say with a grin. He was smitten with Rachel and didn't see the problem. He viewed her attention as a sign of a strong connection, something he had been looking for. Owen's excitement over the new relationship made him blind to these early warning signs. He didn't recognize that Rachel's behavior was more about control than love. She wanted to know where he was at all times, and became upset if he didn't respond to her texts right away. When Owen mentioned wanting to spend time with friends or do something on his own, Rachel would often guilt him into changing his plans. She would act hurt, saying things like, "I just thought you'd rather be with me." To Owen, these seemed like small sacrifices for the sake of a happy relationship. He didn't see them as the early signs of possessiveness that they were. His friends and family, however, saw the changes in Owen. They saw how he was beginning to distance himself from them, how he was becoming more isolated. They worried that Rachel's need for constant attention and control would only get worse. As the relationship between Owen and Rachel deepened, Rachel's influence over Owen's life grew stronger. It started with small changes, things that seemed harmless at first. Rachel began spending more time at Owen's apartment, often staying over for days at a time. Before long, her presence became a fixture in his home. She brought over her belongings, a few clothes, then more personal items, until she practically moved in without a formal discussion. To Owen, this felt like a natural progression in their relationship, a sign that they were getting serious. He welcomed Rachel into his space, not realizing how much control she was beginning to take over his daily life. Rachel's control was subtle at first. She started by suggesting changes to Owen's routine, like what he should eat or when he should go to bed. She would insist on cooking all their meals, claiming it was her way of showing love, but it also meant she decided what and when they ate. She began reorganizing his apartment, putting her things where she wanted them, and gradually making the space feel more like hers than his. Owen thought she was simply making herself at home, but he didn't see that her actions were part of a broader pattern of control. Over time, Rachel's influence extended beyond the walls of their shared home. She started to isolate Owen from his friends and family, using subtle emotional manipulation to do so. Whenever Owen wanted to meet up with friends or spend time with his family, Rachel would find ways to make him feel guilty about leaving her behind. "Why do you want to go out with them when we could have a nice evening together?" she would ask, her tone soft but her message clear. If Owen insisted on going, Rachel would become withdrawn and moody, making him feel bad for choosing others over her. Amelia, Owen's sister, noticed this growing distance. She tried to arrange family dinners or outings, but Owen would often decline, saying Rachel wasn't feeling well or that she wanted to spend time alone with him. Amelia sensed that Owen was slowly being cut off from those who cared about him. Rachel also took steps to control Owen's online presence. She persuaded him to cut back on his social media activity, claiming it was for their privacy and to keep their relationship special. At first, it sounded reasonable to Owen, but then Rachel's requests became more demanding. She would ask to see his messages and question him about any female friends who liked or commented on his posts. If Owen posted a photo that didn't include her, Rachel would get upset, accusing him of trying to hide their relationship. She even went so far as to ask for his passwords, saying it would help build trust between them. Owen's friends noticed Rachel's overbearing presence in his social life. Carl observed how Rachel would insist on accompanying Owen everywhere, even to casual hangouts. It wasn't just that she was always around, Carl said. It was the way she was always watching, always listening, like she was making sure Owen wasn't saying or doing anything she didn't approve of. On the rare occasions when Owen went out without her, Rachel would call or text him constantly, wanting to know what he was doing and who he was with. Rachel's controlling behavior continued to escalate. She began checking Owen's phone, reading his emails, and even monitoring his location using a tracking app she installed under the guise of safety. When Owen questioned her about these intrusions, Rachel would turn the tables, accusing him of not being committed to their relationship. "If you have nothing to hide, why does it bother you?" she would say, making Owen feel like he was the one in the wrong. Owen, caught in the web of Rachel's manipulation, began to lose sight of what was normal in a relationship. He started to doubt himself, wondering if maybe Rachel was right, and he was the one who needed to change. The excitement he once felt about their relationship had turned into a sense of obligation and confusion. He still loved Rachel and wanted to believe that her actions came from a place of love. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was losing a part of himself. As the months went by, Rachel's need for control over Owen grew more intense, turning into a deep paranoia. She would interrogate Owen about his daily activities, questioning every minute he spent away from her. Her once soft and caring voice became sharp, filled with suspicion. If his answer didn't satisfy her, Rachel would accuse him of lying or hiding something from her. She began making invasive inquiries, asking Owen's colleagues about his whereabouts and who he was spending time with. She would approach his coworkers with seemingly innocent questions that quickly turned personal. "Does Owen ever talk about me?" she would ask. Or, "Have you noticed him being close with anyone here?" Her questions were loaded, and it was clear she was fishing for something to confirm her suspicions. The more she asked, the more uneasy Owen's colleagues became. Some tried to avoid her, sensing that her presence was becoming a problem. Owen's colleagues, too, began to notice Rachel's intrusiveness. She would show up during his office hours, sitting quietly in the corner as he met with clients. Her presence was unsettling, and they found it difficult to focus with her in the room. In late August 2021, Rachel's need to control Owen took a darker turn. Owen was away at a conference for a few days, and Rachel saw this as her opportunity to take her surveillance of him to the next level. By this point, her paranoia had reached a fever pitch. While Owen was away, Rachel decided to install hidden cameras throughout his apartment. Rachel knew exactly what she was doing. She had always been skilled in cybersecurity, and she knew how to make the cameras blend in seamlessly with Owen's home. She purchased a set of small, discreet cameras online, ones designed to look like ordinary household items. There was a camera hidden in a smoke detector in the living room, another disguised as an alarm clock in the bedroom, and one cleverly placed inside a picture frame on the bookshelf. Rachel even installed a tiny camera inside a potted plant near Owen's desk, giving her a perfect view of his computer screen and any private moments he might have there. Every angle was covered, and every corner of the apartment was under her watchful eye. Once the cameras were installed, Rachel connected them to a secure server that only she could access. She set up an app on her phone that allowed her to view the live feeds at any time. Day and night, she could watch Owen's every move. At first, Rachel told herself that this was just a precaution, a way to reassure herself that Owen wasn't hiding anything from her. But as the days went on, her obsession with the video feeds grew. She found herself constantly checking her phone, watching Owen's movements in real time. The more Rachel watched, the more her paranoia grew. Every innocent action seemed suspicious to her. If Owen received a call, she would watch closely, trying to read his lips to see who he was talking to. If he left the room for a few minutes, she would switch to the next camera, her eyes glued to the screen, waiting for him to return. One night, Owen noticed that some of his things had been moved around. At first, he brushed it off as nothing. Maybe he had misplaced them before he left for the conference. But as the days passed, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He noticed that Rachel seemed to know things she shouldn't have, like what he was doing at specific times or details about his day that he hadn't shared with her. He started to feel uneasy in his own home, sensing that he was never truly alone. Owen's discomfort grew into suspicion. One evening, while Rachel was out, he decided to search the apartment for anything unusual. He started in the living room, checking behind books and under furniture. Then he moved to the bedroom, carefully examining every object. That's when he spotted it, the alarm clock on his nightstand. It was a new model, one he didn't remember buying. Owen picked it up and examined it closely. He noticed a tiny lens embedded in the face of the clock. His heart sank as he realized what it was, a hidden camera. Panicking, Owen continued his search. He found the camera in the smoke detector, the one in the picture frame, and the one inside the potted plant. The realization hit him hard. Rachel had been spying on him, monitoring his every move. A wave of betrayal and anger washed over him. He felt violated, his privacy shattered by someone he had trusted. As Owen stood in his apartment, surrounded by these devices meant to invade his life, he knew that things could not go on like this. Owen realized he had to make a decision. He could no longer ignore the signs, no longer pretend that everything was okay. It was time to confront Rachel and face the truth. The confrontation that followed was charged with raw emotion. When Rachel returned home, Owen was waiting for her, holding the hidden cameras in his hands. He confronted her with the evidence, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and sadness. Rachel's initial reaction was one of shock and denial. She looked at Owen with wide, pleading eyes, as if trying to grasp the full impact of what he had uncovered. Her demeanor shifted rapidly from one of innocent confusion to defensive and then to desperate justification. She attempted to explain away her actions. She argued that her intentions were not malicious but rooted in her fear of losing him. Rachel's explanations were a jumble of excuses, each more convoluted than the last. She tried to downplay the severity of her actions, insisting that she had only wanted to protect their relationship. Owen, however, was not swayed by her attempts to justify her behavior. The gravity of the situation was clear to him. He saw through her lies and recognized the controlling obsession that had taken over her. The love and trust that once characterized their relationship had been replaced by paranoia and deceit. With a heavy heart, Owen made the difficult decision to end the relationship. He knew that continuing to be with Rachel would only perpetuate the cycle of control and distrust. As he told Rachel that their relationship was over, it was clear that this was a moment of profound sadness for both of them. Owen was determined to take control of his life and seek justice for the invasion of privacy he had suffered. He planned to file a police report to address Rachel's actions and to ensure that his concerns were documented and investigated. Owen reached out to his sister Amelia, hoping to find support and guidance. Amelia was deeply concerned for her brother's safety and emotional well-being and did her best to offer comfort and practical advice. Despite the steps Owen was taking to protect himself, Rachel's state of mind was growing increasingly unstable. The end of their relationship had not been easy for her, and her obsessive tendencies only intensified. Rachel was deeply troubled by the breakup and by the prospect of legal consequences. Her behavior became erratic and unpredictable as she struggled to cope with the reality of losing Owen and the fear of facing repercussions for her actions. On the evening of October 15th, Rachel made a fateful decision to return to Owen's apartment. This visit was marked by a heightened sense of desperation and urgency. Rachel's actions were driven by a complex mix of fear, anger, and a desperate desire to salvage something from the wreckage of their relationship. As she arrived at the apartment, her state of mind was fraught with tension. Owen had been preparing to move forward, but Rachel's unexpected return added a layer of uncertainty and concern. As he prepared to file the police report and continue his efforts to reclaim his sense of security, the situation was rapidly evolving into something more dangerous and unpredictable. Rachel arrived at the apartment visibly distressed and agitated. Her emotions, already frayed from the recent events and her escalating paranoia, drove her to an extreme reaction. As she entered the apartment, tensions between Rachel and Owen were already high. Owen had been preparing to address the situation formally, intending to report Rachel's actions to the police and seek support from his sister Amelia. Rachel, however, was overwhelmed by a mixture of fear, anger, and desperation. The emotional intensity of the moment quickly spiraled out of control. During the ensuing argument, Rachel's behavior became increasingly erratic. Her previously controlling and possessive nature was now manifested in a violent outburst. In a sudden and shocking escalation, Rachel reached for a knife from Owen's kitchen. In the heat of the confrontation, Rachel fatally stabbed Owen. The attack was swift and unanticipated, leaving Owen unable to react or defend himself. The violence was both sudden and severe, marking the end of a relationship that had once seemed promising but had deteriorated into a destructive and tragic situation. The police response was swift. Neighbors who heard the commotion alerted authorities, and when officers arrived, they discovered Owen's lifeless body in the apartment. Rachel was found at the scene and was immediately arrested. Detective Rosario Downey led the investigation into the tragic incident. As part of the investigation, Detective Downey uncovered the extent of Rachel's surveillance operation, which had been hidden throughout Owen's apartment. The discovery of these hidden cameras and other invasive tools provided crucial evidence of Rachel's controlling and obsessive behavior. The trial that followed brought the case into the public eye. The prosecution presented a compelling case against Rachel, highlighting the premeditated nature of the crime and the severe impact it had on Owen's life. They detailed Rachel's extensive surveillance and her violent actions on the night of the stabbing. The defense focused on Rachel's mental state, arguing that her behavior was influenced by psychological issues that impaired her judgment. They attempted to present her actions as a result of severe emotional disturbance rather than premeditated intent. Rachel was found guilty of the charges. The verdict was a sobering conclusion to a case that had shocked the community. The trial's outcome reflected the gravity of the crime and the impact it had on those involved. The community of Olympia, Washington, was deeply affected by the case. The tragedy highlighted the dangers of unchecked emotional instability and the devastating consequences that can arise from possessive and controlling behavior. Owen's death and Rachel's subsequent trial left a lasting impression on the town, serving as a stark reminder of the need for awareness and intervention in cases of domestic violence and psychological abuse. The story of Owen McGraw and Rachel Hayes serves as a chilling reminder of how a seemingly perfect relationship can spiral into a nightmare when control and obsession take hold. The echoes of a love that once promised happiness now reverberate through the community, a stark warning of the dangers that lurk beneath the surface of even the most innocent-seeming connections. As the final gavel fell, the true cost of unchecked obsession and control became all too clear, leaving an indelible mark on everyone touched by the tragic events.